I don't have a team. It's just me and a couple of robots.
Just you and a couple robots hanging out, getting shit done. Do you have a favorite prompt for ChatGPT or Gemini to get it to write what you want?
I had one. At expected behavior, I had a really, really, really good one. I spent months crafting this thing. Then I left and I didn't have a copy of it anywhere in my personal stuff, so I lost it.
James is an AI expert. He and I go way back. We actually used to play basketball together back in Indianapolis. I really enjoyed our conversation. He talks a lot about AI and how startups can start to think about implementing AI into their organization. So I got some ideas for Spring Studio. Really fun conversation. I think you're going to love it.
I've spent like the last decade focused on product management, product strategy, and I recently launched a AI product strategy consultancy where I'm working with companies to help them figure out what to do about AI, where the whole world is sort of shifting over the next few years, and how does that affect their products, their processes, their strategies and roadmap.
James, thanks so much for joining. I'm excited to chat. For those uninitiated, James and I go way back. We used to play basketball together, so excited to hear what he's up to these days. For our listeners, James, do you mind giving everybody a brief background about you and what you're currently up to?
Yeah. Professionally, a bit of a jack of all trades, but I've spent like the last decade focused on product management, product strategy, and I recently launched a AI product strategy consultancy where I'm working with companies to help them figure out what to do about AI, where the whole world is sort of shifting over the next few years, and how does that affect their products, their processes, their strategies and roadmaps. So working with tech and non-tech companies to help them navigate sort of this changing landscape.
Nice. That's awesome. I know you have a background at a company that kind of did a lot of like internal products, but also helped others build products as well. Can you speak to kind of that process and how you're using sort of that experience in shaping your the next chapter in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently left a small company here in Indianapolis called Expected Behavior. And Expected Behavior began as a sort of a high-end, high web scale consulting company. So worked with a lot of big organizations, ones you've probably heard of, but we can't name, helping them manage their traffic under high loads. Um, we pivoted sort of or transitioned that company into a full-blown product company. So we saw some problems and needs along the way as we did our consulting, created products to fit those needs. And as those products grew, slowly transitioned that over to our full-time jobs. So what we did after we stopped consulting was become a bit of a startup studio concept where when we had ideas, problems we saw in the market, we would go and tackle those. We would try to build solutions to those problems, try and sell them. Most of the time, it didn't work. We were wrong, and we'd either exit that product or shut it down. So a lot of what my role was at a high level was doing the strategy, doing the validation, both technical and market validation on a lot of our concepts. So we are a very data-driven company, and a lot of, we would have an idea, and I would find ways to sort of test those ideas, um, try and gather data and compare the relative traction of idea A versus idea B versus idea C, and see where we should focus our efforts. Um, so yeah, that's a lot of what we did. The past couple of years, we spent a fair amount of time as an organization exploring AI. We had some sort of core beliefs about where AI will be useful, where it will be valuable, and that guided a lot of our decision making around AI. So we didn't actually incorporate AI into any of our current products. What we did was we spent a lot of time working on incorporating AI into our processes. We're a very technology heavy company. We have a very small head count, never wanted to be more than 10 people. And so we found ways to use technology, AI included, to speed up our processes and allow us to do more things with fewer people. So yeah. So
Nice. Yeah, I
sort of
mean,
using that as a launch pad into this sort of AI consulting thing where I'm trying to help other companies go through that same process.
yeah, I love that. I feel like there's like two threads we can pull. One is like the product studio thread, which reminds me of like the 37 Signals guys, right? DHH and Jason Fried doing their thing. They started, I mean, I think they started as like a web design firm and then transitioned into, let's build a product for our own project management, which then led to let's build a Gmail competitor of all things, and a calendar, and now they've got a couple other things going. Was that sort of model what you were hoping to go for when starting expected behavior, or when working on that? Was that like generally what it is that you guys were trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. 37 Signals and Basecamp were huge, I guess, inspirations to expected behavior. We looked at a lot of their processes, a lot of their models, trying to figure out similar ways we could do things. We looked at the way they ship software, the way they organize internally. We made a lot of changes to sort of those processes to fit ourselves and our team better, but they were definitely an enormous inspiration and sort of how they look at the world, try and look at it through a bit of a different lens than everybody else. One of the things that we did intentionally and differently, and similarly to Basecamp and those guys, was to avoid raising venture funding. Um, it is a different kind of business, a different kind of even lifestyle, and that was one expected behavior chose intentionally to avoid. So we had products that I thought were good fits for raising venture capital and going big, and we were very intentional about not doing that. So yes, huge inspiration. Some of the things they're doing right now around software that is sort of static, and you build it once, you buy it once, and it's done. They're playing around with that business model. I'm not entirely convinced that's a good idea, but kudos to them for trying, to change the way the world works. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
it's
I love those
almost it's
guys.
almost like it's almost like that ship has sailed, and it's really hard to bring that ship back into harbor, right? It's like the AOL days where you can buy AOL for $40 and just have it. Like we'll see. I think time will tell whether or not that's sustainable enough to keep the business around long term.
I think the cases where that is a good model are probably few and far between, but maybe they can find them and have success there. I certainly empathize with people who are tired of the constant subscription based thing, and everything in my life costs $20 a month for forever, and then they keep raising the prices. But I mean, the reason that model works is it makes the business work. And when the business works, they can fix bugs, they can add new features, they can build integrations, they can adapt to the latest technology, and the software continually gets better. And that's ultimately what us as consumers and us as businesses are paying for, is for better software. And while I am also tired of subscriptions, ultimately I do want better software. So
So going back to what you were saying about leveraging AI to be more efficient or to be better internally, how have you found? I mean, this is moving so fast. This is happening so quickly. Are you of the thinking that AI can really enhance our individual productivity versus replace us altogether? It's just like more of a sidekick rather than replacing us.
I think the answer is and, or both, or yes. Like it's going to do everything. I've seen the meme out there where AI is not coming for your job, but the person who uses AI to do your job is coming for your job. And that's definitely true, right? AI will improve all of our abilities at an individual level, will make a lot of different jobs easier. And yes, I think it's going to replace a lot of different roles over the next few years. Let's say the next 5 to 10 years. I think there's going to be a lot of different kinds of jobs that will be replaced through software, the same way that manufacturing and robots changed the market for a lot of blue collar workers. Now it's going to come to us, information and white collar workers. It's going to be interesting and scary. There's a lot of interesting things coming out on the design front and what you can do with generative design. And I think there's going to be a lot more coming down that sort of bandwagon. On the same side, the other side of the coin, though, is I think there's even more opportunity for creativity, for intuitive thinking, for seeing both trends that the computers can identify and then bucking those trends. So design and creativity are going to be one of those areas where I think the top talent, the people who do the best work will shine even brighter. One of the things that we ran into at Expected Behavior when we tried to work on our, let's say, improving our development timelines and ability was that we decided and concluded that there's sort of this curve where AI is not very useful if you don't really know how to program. You still have to know what to ask it, how to get it started. And if you're really good at development, it's also not that useful. You already know a lot of the shortcuts, the ways to make it easier. It'll help. But then it's that middle ground where you're not an elite level programmer. You don't have 15, 20 years of experience, but you do have a couple years and you know sort of how to get things done. That's where I think AI can be a big difference maker on an individual level. And then on an organizational level, I think AI is going to be an enormous game changer. So
Nice. Yeah, I would love to learn. I mean, selfishly, right? Selfishly, like I run a 15-person company, so we're still relatively small. We are a design firm, so we have been keeping an eye on any sort of Gen AI products that are coming out that might be able to help us out. But where are you seeing the most amount of like opportunities from an organizational standpoint leveraging AI? Like, what are some good AI opportunities outside of like the Gen AI space, but maybe more so in like internal processes or helping workers become a little bit more efficient, whatever that looks like?
yeah, great question. I think I sort of look at the AI opportunities over the next few years. There's sort of two buckets. You have traditional startups, the whole venture funding community, and they are charging as fast as they can into this AI space, whatever that might be. And that's very heavy on generative AI and video and imaging, and what does that going to change? And I think there are going to be companies and organizations in that space that are going to be rocket ships that are going to take over the world and change the way we do everything. Um, but then I think there's the 99% rest of us who aren't in that space. And for us, I think what AI does is, frankly, it helps the incumbents. It helps most the people who have unique data, unique sources of data. And that data might be customer records, it might be emails, it might be content, video libraries, image libraries, anything that's like this source of data that until we came up with large language models, that data was inaccessible from a programmatic standpoint, from an automation standpoint. And it was only accessible to the very largest companies who have teams of engineers and PhDs to create custom machine learning models. And what generative AI has done with OpenAI and the various open source models is sort of democratized the ability to access those models. The general models they've built are so powerful and accurate compared to the specialized models we were working with a few years ago, that anybody can use these models. Anybody can have access to them. They're just a single API call away. So I think the most value comes not from using the models per se, but in who has the data and the processes that can best be used by that model, who can most monetize that information. So that's where I see the big winners coming from, right? And that's companies that you might not think of. It might be a plumbing company with 20 years of customer records that just made the efficiency of their businesses, double in terms of what their plumbers can do, of what they know about how to quote jobs accurately and improve their profit margins. All that data just to a standard company is now available in a way it wasn't ever before. So that's where I see the big winners coming. Are those who have sort of a new segment of data they can unlock.
That's so interesting. I love the fact that you brought up like plumbers, for example, like an industry that you would think is going to be untouched by AI. And sure, like on the surface, yeah, we're most likely a ways away from some AI robot being able to do any sort of plumbing work. It might happen eventually, but as of right now, probably not on the horizon. Like not in our maybe not in our lifetimes. But to then think about, okay, well, this company's been around 20 years. They have this massive customer data set. They have, like you said, being able to scope and quote more accurately, spending less time on that part, which would then lead to more efficient, yeah, more efficiencies in the in the company. You might not be able to see it, like it might not be so clear and obvious, but to your point, it's like it, those that do decide to lean into this might see some efficiency improvements.
Yeah, and I think you brought up the other good use case for these kinds of technologies is in the process automation space. If you're running a plumbing company and you're trying to create estimates or invoices, that kind of activity can be automated a lot better than it could be in the past. And that's where I think it'll come for jobs the soonest, is any person whose task is to input information into a computer and then output information by email or mail or however they do it. The AI tools are going to get pretty good at doing those jobs really fast. So I think the companies that win in terms of building the AI tools are the incumbents who already have, who are touching those data points already. So, Salesforce will be a huge winner. Those kinds of organizations, I think, will more slowly than the startups, but eventually sort of, be the king of the hill in terms of the AI game. But the benefits are going to sprinkle down to everybody over the next few years. So, though, I'm curious. You said you're looking obviously in the space. What are you guys saying? Where is it headed with design? Are you using any of those tools yet to improve any part of your process?
Yeah, we've dabbled in, played around with some tools, some Gen AI tools, but it's not quite there yet. Not quite there. We understand it's coming. We understand that it's getting there, and we're paying close attention to essentially like shifting from purely like craft based design to a little bit more thoughtful, intentional about like what type of prompt one might use to create this. Understanding that it's probably coming at some point. We haven't found any tools outside of any tools that we love. So we haven't brought it into our process yet. Um, there are what I have found actually incredibly helpful is this sort of exploration phase. We can use Gen AI to explore various options, to explore various directions, like creative directions, to help inform the next set of designs that we will actually do ourselves. So it's almost like I'm exploring this new thing. We have this ticket come in from a client, not quite sure what that looks like yet. And instead of going on Dribble or going on Behance and looking at, thousands and thousands of examples, that is now turning into, let's just start prompting OpenAI, ChatGPT to come or Dolly to come up with some ideas, some options. And the creative process kind of starts from there. We branch off from one design that we see into a different direction, and then we branch off of that into another direction. So we haven't really like it's not something we're using super regularly yet, but it's definitely on there. I mean, it's definitely something we're thinking about and going to use at some point. We love using it as a sidekick. Like there's no better way to spin up website placeholder copy than to just ask ChatGPT, kind of give it the prompt saying, this is the page we're working on and this is the challenge, and help us come up with some copy.
My experience is exactly the same. I was fooling around with I think Vercel has a website generator based off AI. You put in a prompt and it makes you a web page. And the first time I did it, my mind was blown. I was like, this is awesome. This is like 80% of exactly what I want. And then I tried to get the remaining 20% and like all hell broke loose. There was
Oh,
like menus over here and an image floating over there, and
right?
I'm like, oh wow, wow. We are not
It's
there yet,
not there
but
yet.
you
It's
can see it
so
coming.
Yeah, it's so good at just helping kickstart the creative engine, right? It's like this is kind of what I'm thinking, and if you have the skills to be able to take it the final 20%, then I mean it's amazing. It's so helpful. I also like to think of it like I see these website generators, and I'm like, we sort of have had that for a long time without the prompt side of things, but we've had the Wix templates, the Squarespaces to be able to get us a version of a site that we really, really want, at least 80% of a site that we really, really want. And we've had that for a long time. I understand that there's differences, but it's almost like we're just we're just creating a template here. Like we're just creating a very kind of templated layout, very I don't know, very boilerplate, simple, directionless almost.
That's exactly what I did. I fooled around with a couple custom designs. My personal design skills are not, let's say what they once were. It's not a strength of mine anymore. And I ended up going just like with Card, right? Like you go to, card.co and they've got hundreds of templates. I'm like, well, that one looks beautiful. I'm going to use that one. And then, when I'm ready to upgrade to something better, more custom, I'll be reaching out to you. But for now, I just wanted a one pager and it meets my needs and it didn't require any AI. So yeah, we're already there. I guess I will say the one design tool that I have found useful is Photoshop. Some of their generative AI stuff, I don't know if it's ready for, production level design yet. But when I'm fiddling around and say, hey, make this or delete that or expand this, it's pretty impressive what it can do. And I think that goes back to my earlier comments about, they're the incumbent with the most data, the most resources, the most, designers on staff to help train the models. Like they're the ones who are going to most likely end up winning the AI design wars that are going to come over the next few years. So
And I don't know if they ever classified this as an AI feature, but like the Magic Lasso tool is a good reminder that AI has played a role in Photoshop for decades, probably like a long time, and they've just been able to improve it and get it to a place where it truly feels magical. It truly feels like, oh my gosh, whatever I need it to do, I can just either prompt it, or there is now a native tool that I can just use, and it's like magic. It's just like magic, and it helps.
I mean, I do remember when Magic Lasso came out, and that was mind blowing. That saved
It was
me,
mind blowing.
hours. Right? You'd be zooming in and like trying to draw lines, and yeah. No,
Totally,
that's a great
totally.
point. That's a
I still catch myself going back to those old bad habits all the time. I'm like, I'm just going to use the pen tool and make my points and then round those over. I'm like, there's better ways to do this now. Better ways to do this. Oh man. So what are so outside of Photoshop and the design space, have you been using any low cost or no cost tools for yourself? Like, is it just OpenAI and ChatGPT? Are there any other tools that we should be paying attention to?
that's a great question. I've spent a lot of time fiddling around in the space. I would say my default answer is it's just Chat GPT. It's OpenAI APIs, and it's Google Gemini for me right now. Um, for example, what I found is that for content, for writing, I find Google Gemini to be about twice as good as GPT. It can, you can feed it a metaphor and it will weave that metaphor throughout your entire piece of content in a way that GPT is not capable of yet. So things like that where you sort of figure out one model is better than another model currently, and obviously these things change from month to month and you have to test those assumptions. I still use I think GPT and Gemini the most. OpenAI just released the Chat GPT Mac app. That's been a game changer. I used a number of other different apps to try and speed up my access to GPT previously. And theirs just did I think, a better job of that. And it's more native, it's faster. So anything I can do to sort of speed up the usage of GPT has been very helpful for me, where instead of making it more the default instead of asking Google, you've got Perplexity, for example, trying to sort of replace the Google and research side of things. Um, Other AI tools I've been using for a long time is like Jasper for content development. It's great at that. I was able to sort of take what Jasper was giving me and then replicate that in Google Gemini for a much lower cost. But that's because I was doing it on an individual basis. I think a tool like Jasper is still going to be the winner on a team basis. When you're trying to create the voice of your organization, do you have humor? What kind of tone do you use? Are you seeking to educate or are you seeking to convince? Those kinds of nuances and being able to, use that across an entire organization. I think there's going to be tools like Jasper, Grammarly, for example. I mean, Grammarly almost probably just got put out of business by Apple this week, but they're still going to be slightly better at it for now. And I think over time, though, is you're going to see you're going to see Google Gemini get better and better. They're in the workplace. It's obvious they're going to make workplace-wide prompts and tones to help in the near future. So all these things are coming. I'm personally very nervous about all the little startups, who are AI tools and are just different plays of fine-tuned open AI models. Like I don't know how sustainable those kinds of businesses are. So I'm fooling around with things like you've got Sheet AI. I think their website's sheetai.app. And that's sort of a powerful way to boost Google Sheets and create a lot more sort of power there that previously, if you're not like an expert on VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, and I know a lot of people aren't, like it's a way to get those kinds of resources out of Google Sheets. And going back to our previous comment, it's going to make some people a lot more productive. So there are tools that I see out there. Like there's I think Neurons is a big enterprise tool. It's less for little guys, but it applies a lot of machine learning data on advertisements and banner ads to try and figure out how likely are they to get clicks, where are people's eyes attracted to, and they're using machine learning to do a lot of that kind of thing. So, and again, that's more the traditional machine learning thing we've had for a few years, and it's really only accessible to the big enterprise guys. But I see that stuff going to be coming downhill in the future, where you're making a banner ad in Photoshop and you click the you know analyze this for me button, and it's going to be like, hey, it's people are going to look at this headline and then that picture, and is that what
Yeah.
you want? Is that the order you want?
Do you
So
do you know of any startups doing that right now? Like taking that enterprise level solution that is really, really great for the big guys, for the big companies, for banner ads, for example, and bringing that to a little bit more of an accessible place?
I'm not sure of anybody doing it at doing that particular use case. I think I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It probably does exist, right? What I've seen a lot of that I think is coming a lot more downstream is in the video space. So Capsule, for example, is
Huge fan.
doing,
Huge fan.
yeah, yeah, is just doing things that make people's lives 10 times easier if you're creating social media videos. So I think that's a great example of something that is usable today. Will probably be around for a while. I don't even know if that was available at the enterprise level previously. Probably not. So yeah, that's a great tool. I see, Diagram is probably one you fiddle around with, where they've got a lot of AI tools built inside Figma. Um, there's a lot of Zapier I was just reviewing their AI stuff yesterday and caught up on what they were up to and was sort of blown away. You can use their internal chatbot to make your own zaps and connect all your zaps together. Like, hey, check my emails and then auto reply this, including this quote data, and then it'll build the check email zap, and then the grab the data zap, and then the reply zap, and like that's great. And then they've got other ones where you make your own chatbots and basically create your own personal assistants. I think this is all very early in terms of just touching the capabilities of generative AI, but it's fun. And again, I can just keep going back, right? They're the incumbent with that has all the pre-built integrations. They're the ones who are going to be the king of AI-based process automation. This made their product 10 times more valuable. So yeah, I think it's still for us, little guys especially. I think I would encourage people to stay close to the core models, to stay close to GPT, to stay close to Gemini. Things that I've started to fiddle with on my space personally is like using OpenAI's vector embedding engine on my own personal data sources. So, take all my notes, run them through their embedding engine. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the way that works, is it basically turns text into numbers, and it classifies text on like a I don't know, 1,000 different vectors of how they all relate to each other. And then it extracts meaning from that text. I think the classic example that I think blows everybody's mind is if you take the number for the word for king, and then you subtract the number for the word man, and then add the number for the word woman, the output is very close to the number for the word queen. Like, enabling computers to work that way is mind blowing. So,
Oh,
I'm
that's so
fiddling
good.
around with a lot of that stuff just on my, personal exploration. And I think anyone who can access and program an API should be doing the same. You don't need to have a big tool to do this. It cost me a whole, I think, quarter, 25 cents of my OpenAI API usage to do this on my entire LinkedIn network. It was a lot more expensive to try and scrape my LinkedIn network than it was to make a powerful search for it. So,
Oh,
I'm
that's
doing the
so
same thing
cool.
for my bookmarks right now. So yeah, I don't know if that's the most satisfying answer, and that there's not like 1,000 tools I'm recommending, but
You recommended quite a few. You did mention, and I want to come back to what you said about Apple, kind of like, yeah, Apple and Grammarly. Yeah, I want to come back to that. But first, just because we're currently talking about this, what you just kind of laid out for your own personal use case, I can imagine so many organizations and so many companies can do something similar within their own organization. And that can be an absolute game changer. Can be an absolute game changer to be able to synthesize all of those notes, all of the meeting notes, whether the meeting notes are captured by AI, by an AI bot or not, but capture all of that information. You have this massive, massive data set now. And to be able to parse that data and turn it around into something, maybe something visual, maybe the numbers that you mentioned, which can then you can kind of extrapolate, and you can kind of go into where the numbers can lead you, which is graphs, tables, like understanding like what the data actually means. How can organizations do that in, or let me back up just a little bit. How can a 15 to 20 person startup do something like that to just get 1% more efficient, or just to get a little bit better?
yeah, obviously, I'm hoping that they call me. I like long walks barefoot on the beach. I quit my job in order to try and help companies like that, right? But I think especially if you're a startup, if you have engineers on staff, give them some time to explore these tools. Make sure that they're familiar with the open AI APIs. It doesn't have to be expensive. It can be quite affordable, just to fiddle around. Make sure your entire team is on the latest paid models. There's an enormous difference between what GPT 3.5 can do and what GPT 4.0 can do. Enormous difference in terms of its ability to accurately create useful answers. So invest in making sure that your entire team is on the cutting edge of this, because it changes, right? Like the use cases 6 months ago, AI could not do that, and now it can. So you want to make sure your team is aware of when that switch flips for your particular use case. I think the other good one I mentioned earlier is Zapier. If you're not using Zapier to do process automation in your organization today, try it. Keep an eye on what it can do, how you can connect things, and then look for ways to leverage that.
Sorry to jump in, like a non-technical person like myself, a team of 15, I have a Zap that is probably 25 steps long because I want this automation to take place. It has saved me so much time and headache, but the time to get it set up was a pain in the ass. I wish I would have called you so you could so you could tell me exactly how to lay it out, what to do, where the pitfalls are, because I made many mistakes setting that Zap up. But once it was working, it was such a game changer. It was so nice.
Actually, that reminds me of another tool I failed to mention. I haven't used this one personally yet, but it's a heyday.xyz, and I'm not entirely sure what they're up to or what all they do. But essentially, they capture information, process it with AI, and then output notes and content, uh, action items. So I was talking to a partner over a Zoom meeting, and he used this, and then he sent me an email with all the action items we discussed. Like, you're doing XYZ, and I'm going to do ABC. And I was like, well, that's handy, right? And we've had these kinds of things in the past, but they're getting a lot smarter. They're getting a lot more accurate. And then obviously the next step is you connect that into your automation process with a tool like Zapier, right? You look for to-dos that are in this shape or that involve this kind of information, and then you automatically process that to do or acquire that information. A lot of those kinds of automations from meetings, from Zoom calls, from documents, from memos, or emails, are probably more accurate, are possible today. So
Nice. I love that. All right. So, taking a quick detour, I do want to hear your thoughts on Apple's recent announcement. We're recording this June 11th, 2024. I haven't even been able to catch up yet. So, I'm coming in this completely green. What did Apple just announce yesterday?
I have not caught up on it all either. I was late to what I like to call Apple Church. Uh, so we go to congregate, and what part of what they released a lot. Um, I think their big intelligence items is they're bringing generative AI onto your Apple devices. So and I guess maybe back up and say the way most companies and should be implementing AI is that you get a request, you get a question, you get a prompt, you get to email you, whatever it is. You process that request, and then you parse it, and you try and figure out what information do I need to answer this request. So that might be a document, it might be an email, it might be a customer record, any of those kinds. You figure that information, and then you gather it all up. You maybe rank it by what is the likelihood that it answers that question, and then you feed all that data into your generative AI and tell your generative AI, hey, here's a bunch of data, answer this question based off that data. So that process is how all of these AI tools work. And Apple did the exact same thing. What they've done is sort of they've taken three paths to processing questions you're going to ask Siri. They're going to be like, okay, here's what you're asking for. We can answer this on the device. Your phone has all the information we need to process this, and then they do it. They don't send out any information to the internet. They don't log anything. It's all on your phone. So from a privacy standpoint, that's great. If I ask it to, check an email or look up the weather or things that it already knows, it's going to do that. Then there's a second category of requests where your phone isn't powerful enough to do this. I don't remember. I didn't catch this bit of exactly examples of those requests. I imagine they're things like image generation, things where they need external data that they don't have. They're going to send that up into the Apple Cloud, and the Apple Cloud's going to do its thing and send it back down. So a little less private, a little more information being spread out to the world, at least at a theoretical level. Um, and then the third category is where they're like, hey, I don't know. And in that case, you get a little prompt that says, hey, do you want to ask ChatGPT? And you're like, okay, sure. And then it sends you your whole request on the ChatGPT, and ChatGPT answers it for you. So I don't know what the financial arrangement there was with Apple, but enormous win for OpenAI. Um, a lot of, you know, they're going to get a lot more exposure. It's going to make it a lot more accessible to everyday people who, again, aren't on the cutting edge, who aren't paying for a $20 OpenAI subscription, who aren't testing it 30 times a day. It's going to be very interesting when this comes out. So that, I think, is the core of like the Siri level integrations. They demoed a lot of man, I'm really curious to see how well this works. They demoed a lot of theoretical examples where you can ask Siri to look up things and do things you can't today. Like they gave an example where, let's say you're headed to the airport to pick up your mom, and you ask Siri, "Hey, where am I having lunch with my mom today?" And it knows who your mom is. It knows that you want to know about lunch today, and it's not in your calendar. So it checks your email and it checks your iMessage history to figure out what message you guys talked about lunch and what is lunch, right? And it figures that out. It knows what the concept of lunch is. Going back to the king and queen thing, right? It knows what lunch is. It knows what food is. And then it parses it out and it answers your question. It says, oh, hey, you're having, lunch over here at Little Mexico at noon. You guys already talked about it. That's the answer. You just forgot. Um, so they have a lot of examples of things like that maybe this helps people. I'm not sure. That's sort of like an odd thing, odd example. I'm not sure how useful it will be today. I don't use Siri for anything other than taking reminders and looking up questions on the internet that my kids ask me. Uh, I'm very disappointed with what Apple's done with Siri to date. Same with Google. Like it could be so much more, and they didn't let that happen. So I'm very excited about the future. Some of the other things they did, they implemented in like built-in grammar checking and rewriting, similar to the way Gemini works in Google Docs. If you have fiddle with that, you select text and you're like, make this more formal, make this shorter, make this funnier, make this longer, rewrite it this way, check for grammar. All those buttons are sort of now built into all of the Apple operating systems. So again, fantastic use cases. This is going to help a lot of professionals, and all of our emails are going to start sounding exactly the same. So the ones that stand out are going to be the creatives, the ones who can not listen to the machines and do something different.
Yep. That's funny that you bring that up. One of I was chatting with a quote unquote cold email expert, and the cold email expert is telling me like ways he stands out from the herd, from the rest. He says, I intentionally misspell words throughout the email because that catches people's attention. It's like, how did you misspell be there soon? Like, how can you misspell? But it catches your eye. He always includes sent for, I think he says sent from my iPhone, but misspells iPhone. All of these like clever little ways to just stand out a little bit. This is not formal. He never capitalizes. He never capitalizes words. Like all of these ways to just stand out a little bit. He's like, give it a shot. Try it. I'm like, I don't know if I can. Like, I don't know if I can. But do you think? I know they announced this on an update for Siri. Is that coming to macOS as well as iOS, or is that just going to be on iOS for now, and then macOS Siri update is going to come later?
I think it's all coming to everything at once, is it was my impression, or will be as part of the new Mac operating system, which they named Sonoma. So when Sonoma releases and when I think iOS 18 releases, whatever the next major versions are, it will be a part of those version releases and appears to be roughly everywhere at once. I think that'll be one of the tricky things is what does Siri on your Mac know versus Siri on your iPhone? Um, the way they lock a lot of data down for privacy reasons will be an interesting case for Apple. That's why I personally prefer, Google's approach more, where they're like, I don't know, we don't care about your privacy. We're gonna have all your data. I'm like, sure, take it. You know, let me do useful things, please.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of with you.
So pros and cons to each their own. There's definitely some information I don't want Google to have, but by and large, I'm like, yeah, please have all my emails, please have all my contacts. Um, so it'll be interesting how Apple, navigates that. One of the things they demoed was basically bringing your phone onto your Mac screen. So if you get a notification, so notifications on your phone will now pop up on your computer, which,
Okay.
man, I'm not excited about that at all, but some people will
Yeah.
probably like that feature.
Yeah, give me
And then
that
they gave an
toggle to turn that
example.
off.
Yes. Yeah, but they gave an example where like Duolingo reminds you for like the 100th time this week to keep working on your Spanish, and you're like, yeah, now's a good time for a lesson, and the Duolingo app pops up on your computer instead of your phone, and then you do your lesson. You don't have to switch contexts, and I'm like, well, that's sort of cool. That's sort of weird. We'll see how that goes, but they're trying to mesh all these things together, and I think they're what they're calling Apple Intelligence or Siri Intelligence will definitely be one of those.
Okay. All right.
I'm
Interesting.
probably forgetting like five different things they announced on the
No,
AI
I mean
side.
I think that's enough for my peanut-sized brain to noodle on for a little bit. I'm probably going to rewatch the whole or watch the whole announcement just to check it out myself. But kind of a cliche question. It's been asked everywhere, especially when it comes to AI. And maybe we can end on this. Do you have a favorite prompt for ChatGPT or Gemini to get it to write what you want? And we're just talking about Gen AI writing, like not any no nothing related to design.
I had one. I had expected behavior. I had a really, really, really good one. I spent months crafting this thing. Um, then I left and I didn't have a copy of it anywhere in my personal stuff. So I lost it. Um, it was about a paragraph and it went something along the lines of be professional, concise, uh, be helpful and instructive without using buzzwords. And it was very good at finding, for me, again, the tone I wanted to convey when I was asking. And again, it only worked in Google Gemini and only on the latest versions. And even then, it didn't work all the time. But it had about an 80% success rate of getting very close to what it wanted it to do. And it was very good. The tone was right. Um, yeah, I wish I had the word for word copy. I haven't done a lot of like AI based content generation recently, so I haven't really needed to use that kind of prompt. But that was the one that worked for me. It was a paragraph long with instructions and mainly around being instructive and helpful, not trying to be salesy. At the hardest part for me to get AI to do is to mix to find the right balance between professional and informal because the AI tools love to have these buttons that say make it more formal or make it more relaxed.
Yeah,
And both anytime you press that button, it goes too far.
it goes too far.
And so for
Just
me,
increments. I just want increments.
yes, yes, for me it was all about I found the prompt that let me have the balance of between those two I was happy with, and then I didn't have to fiddle with it. I'd say the other thing I do is anytime I write anything online, almost any email, any LinkedIn post, anything, I run that through Google Gemini, if not Google Gemini and ChatGPT. And I'm just looking for alternate phrasings, different ways of saying the same thing, maybe a more concise sentence. I don't really give it a lot of prompts other than just rewrite. And then I see what it says. And, maybe a third of the time I grab a sentence or a phrasing and I use it, but it just helps me brainstorm better. And I think it makes me, be a better communicator by just double, triple checking everything I do. So it's no different than working on a team, except I don't have a team. It's just me and a couple of robots. So
Just you and a couple robots hanging out, getting shit done. Um, one that I love, like I love that prompt. Um, what I have found to be incredibly helpful is at the beginning of the prompt, I ask it to act as if you are a creative director at so and so, act as if you are a newspaper editor or a copy editor or whatever. Giving it that sort of guideline, to me at least, produced results where it's like a little bit more in line with what I'm going for tonally, because it's like creative director might respond differently to what I'm giving it versus a newspaper editor, for example, like looking formal, like super, I guess you could say like, more or less by the book, and doesn't want to deviate at all. But yeah, that's something that's worked for me.
that's a great one. I'm glad you brought that up and recommended that. That I've had success with that. Sometimes I will find journalists that I know are pretty prolific. So think book authors, New York Times writers, things of that stature, and I'll ask it to write in their style. Normally, I dislike the results because they go a little too hard, but it's a fun exercise to see how AI thinks different people would communicate the same thoughts. Uh, I think your prompt is a lot more useful on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes when you're fiddling around, you're just trying to find the right balance and get it to get it dialed in. So that's a good one.
Awesome. Cool, man. This has been a very interesting conversation. I don't normally get to talk AI with many people outside of robots, so this has been nice.
I think
None of
that'll
my friends care
change.
too much about it. Yeah, I think so too.
I think
I think
that'll
so too.
change. A few years from now, you're going to be sitting in the coffee shop with all the other Photoshop guys, and you're going to be talking about how you got your computer back working for you, and it's just how it's going to work. So,
Just
I think
working.
it'll change.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
love it.
awesome, man.
Cool, man. Well, where can people find you if they want to get in touch, learn more about what you got going on, and potentially reach out in case they're looking for a consultant to come on and help them with some AI stuff.
Sure, it's just James Paden, Paden.com. So, thank you for asking. I'm just, you know, here to help people. I think there's going to be so many companies moving this direction. Everyone's going to have to change in one way or another the next few years. I view it the same way as the invention of SaaS or the invention of the iPhone, right? This is a game changing technology with probably even broader implications for non technology businesses. So I'm just looking to help anybody who's trying to get better.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you, Tristan.